Time for an oil change? Head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. We've also got you covered when it comes to oil changes, thanks to Pennzoil Synthetic Motor Oil, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube. Leave worry behind.
Hello there. Deadlines often spur action, but not always. And the latter was the case yesterday in Pittsburgh. With Adam Schefter, Tim Hasselbeck, and Louis Riddick, I'm Wendy Next. 4 o'clock Eastern on Monday. That was yesterday, was the deadline for franchise players and teams to reach agreement on any long-term deal. It just wasn't to be for Le'Veon Bell and the Steelers. Despite what both sides describe as a good faith effort, Bell will play his second consecutive season under the franchise tag after the two sides failed to agree on a long-term contract, the lack of which likely spells the final season for Bell in Pittsburgh. To all my Steeler fans, he says, my desire always has been to retire a Steeler. Both sides worked extremely hard today. This was yesterday to make that happen. But the NFL is a hard business at times. To the fans that had hope, I'm sorry we let you down, but trust me, 2018 will be my best season to date. And then from the Steelers' perspective, even though we could not reach a long-term contract agreement with Le'Veon Bell, we are excited he will be with the team in 2018. We worked very hard to find common ground, but we were unable to accomplish that prior to Monday's deadline. Le'Veon will play this season under the franchise tag designation. After the season is complete, we again will attempt to work out a long-term contract with Le'Veon in the hope that he will continue his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Adam Schefter followed this all day yesterday and again today. What does it all mean?
Well, Wendy, I think there are short and long-term implications for both Le'Veon Bell and the Pittsburgh Steelers. In regards to Le'Veon Bell, you heard him talk about the season he's going to have. The question is when that will begin. Now, Jeremy Fowler, who covers the Steelers for ESPN.com, said that he expects that Bell will be in there for the start of the season. He will miss training camp, but that he also is subject to change his mind. And Le'Veon Bell will have 6 weeks here to decide when he wants to report ultimately. And it sounds like right now his thinking is that he would follow a similar plan to last year. But after this season, there's no doubt that he's going to become an unrestricted free agent. And there's a real chance that he's going to leave Pittsburgh, which had 2 straight years under the franchise tag, to sign him and didn't. Look what happened with Tremaine Johnson, the Rams, 2 years as a franchise player, left. Kirk Cousins, 2 years as a franchise player in Washington, left. And the overwhelming chances are that Le'Veon Bell will leave. And if and when he does leave, that leaves the Pittsburgh Steelers in something of a state of transition because Ben Roethlisberger is at the tail end of his career. Le'Veon Bell is almost out the door. And the 2 players of the 3 that are responsible, I think, for this organization being in a great spot are ready to move on from this organization, which will be turning its page. Plus, there'll be the questions about Le'Veon Bell this year short term and how that impacts Pittsburgh going forward.
Did the Steelers make a mistake? I'll ask you.
Wendy, I don't really think you can say that the Steelers made a mistake because they made a concerted effort, by all accounts, to go ahead and sign him to a deal that would be, obviously a landmark type of deal for a running back that really doesn't value the position and really does value the player, so to speak, when you're talking about average per year that's been put out there and guaranteed money. Now, if that's guaranteed money at signing that you're talking about, that is $30+ million, that puts him in rarefied air. That puts him in wide receiver, upper echelon wide receiver air. I've said it numerous times. I'll say it again. There's only 6 wide receivers in terms of veterans that have had their contract redone that are making $30+ million guaranteed at signing. If that is the case with Le'Veon Bell, again, that puts him in some rare company. So I don't think the Steelers got it wrong. They want the player back. They tried to make a concerted effort to sign him. It just doesn't work out. It takes 2 to tango.
In fact, I actually think there would be people that were going to be critical of the Steelers to signing him to a deal like that. You're referencing rarefied air for receivers. Let's not forget, even though he had 85 catches, he's a runner. And the reason that people don't do that with runners, it's no different when people went through it with Chris Johnson and he wanted to be paid as an elite offensive weapon, that everyone was like, wow, I'm not so sure about that. The Titans did it. And then sure enough, in a snap of your fingers, he's no longer an elite offensive weapon because of the position that he plays. And so I think if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and you love Le'Veon Bell and the numbers are accurate, I think you have to trust that Kevin Colbert did everything possible to get a deal done. In fact, probably went above and beyond what other organizations would have been willing to do.
The agent said, Adisa Bakari, who's going to be on NFL Live here coming up at 2 o'clock, if I could tease that, basically that the Steelers were willing to pay the position, but not the player. And what he meant by that is this, that they were willing to pay him as a top running back, the top running back. But he viewed himself as a dynamic offensive playmaker, which he is, because he is every bit as valuable as Antonio Brown or Jarvis Landry, who got $16 million, or Sammy Watkins, who got $16+ million from the Chiefs. So that's how Le'Veon Bell viewed himself, and that's what he believes his worth is. And had he been on the open market this offseason, there are people who thought he would have gotten $16 million a year now, and I think he believes that he'll get more next offseason. We'll find out if he's right.
But Adam, name me a guy that gets paid like another position gets paid. Antonio Brown, you can make the argument he's the best wide receiver in football. He doesn't get paid like quarterbacks.
No.
So, name me another guy that gets that doesn't get paid by his position.
I agree with you.
No, right.
I'm
not challenging you, but I'm
his
saying,
skills,
Jimmy
he's
Graham,
catching the
when
ball.
he wanted to be a receiver or
tight end, right.
But he's a tight end. Name me another guy. That's great that you want that. I want to be a scratch golfer. I'm not. You know what I mean?
You know what? The Jimmy Graham example is a great one. Because, look, I understand why he wants to be paid this way, and I understand his argument as far as he's making as far as him being more valuable than many wide receivers who are getting paid much more than him. I understand that. But the nature of the position is such that, look, when you're negotiating contracts for that position, you're always trying to project future performance here and minimize risk. I say that all the time, minimize risk. And the risk to that position is unlike any other. And teams just aren't – well, actually, I shouldn't say teams aren't going to go there because it sounds like the Steelers did go there. They did go into a realm where they weren't paying the position because no one else is getting paid. No other running back is getting offered that kind of money on an average per year basis or guaranteed money basis. No other running back. So they were paying the player relative to what they thought he brought to their football team. I mean, at some point in time, and look, I don't want to be accused here of saying, well, you just don't want players to get paid, because I do. I used to be one. I wish I got paid this kind of money. But, the fact is that at some point they have to draw the line, and they can't. This can't just go on forever. It just can't.
Take a look, if you will, at the 2019 potential free agents.
That's
it's an impressive list. And that is the key word. It's a potential because we don't know for sure.
And I'll say this, Wendy, every year we could put up a list at this time on July 17th and say, here is the list of potential players. And when all is said and done, a lot of these players will not wind up hitting the market. But what's interesting about this list is 4 of the players on here were franchise players who did not come close to getting a deal done yesterday. Now, I think Le'Veon Bell did come close, but Ziggy Ansah, LaMarcus Joyner, DeMarcus Lawrence did not come close, and they were not going to get long-term deals, and they are expected to be a part of that free agent class in 2019. But I think we all could agree, Le'Veon Bell is going to be a free agent. And unless Odell Beckham Jr. or Aaron Donald unexpectedly emerges, he's going to be the marquee free agent of the 2019 free agent class, the same way that Kirk Cousins, a twice franchise player, was in the 2018 free agent class.
And the only other guy that was more interested in Le'Veon Bell getting a deal than Le'Veon Bell, or as interested, would have been David Johnson.
Well, correct.
No question. No question. And to Adam's point earlier, we will hear from Le'Veon Bell's agent about the last 48 hours, perhaps the last 18 months or so. He will join us shortly to talk about exactly how close they came to getting this deal done, and also, of course, what that means next for Le'Veon Bell and the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the meantime, from one player with no long-term contract to another who's not happy, it's Earl Thomas, who made a few waves when he posted this on Instagram. Always been the underdog, ain't nothing new. Extend. If you don't want me, let's make a trade happen. I understand it's a business. All of this referencing the fact that he too is looking for a new deal, is displeased with the way things are going. Adam, let's just start with this. What's the possibility the Seahawks would trade Earl Thomas?
I don't think it's ever been overly feasible. Look, they can make some calls, field some inquiries, debate the decision, but I don't believe to this date that they've ever gotten close to trading Earl Thomas for all the discussion that we've had about him. Clearly, he is not happy, and Earl Thomas is a very smart, savvy veteran. He knows what doing something like this will do. And when you put out a public statement on Instagram, the way that Earl Thomas did, I think when you speak to people around the league, they believe that he's trying to create a mess of furor, attention, make it unpleasant for the Seahawks so that they would go ahead and trade him. I think he'd like to be traded. I don't think the Seahawks have come close to trading him. I think that to get him out of there, with all the changes that they've had, with as great a player as he is, it would take a lot. And there hasn't been a team that's willing to compensate the the Seahawks with a lot, knowing that they'd also have to compensate Earl Thomas with a lot because you're trading for the player who wants a contract and the team that wants compensation. And that's the reason that you don't see a lot of trades in the league, because there are two parties that have to be compensated, in this case, the player and the team.
And let's be clear, we talked about this yesterday. There has been a great deal of change on that Seattle defense. For this to be one more piece of that puzzle to move, Lewis, to Adam's point, you would think would take a great deal.
Well, sure. I mean, look, from the team standpoint, they're going to be selfish to some degree because he still is a player that is at the top of his game, and his peers will tell you that. And really, your objective eye will tell you that when you watch him play the football game. And he is
Hall of Fame player.
He has tremendous range, tremendous playmaking ability, and he is a guy who knows that scheme like the back of his hand. And he's the last of the Legion. So why would they want to get rid of him? Now, from Errol's standpoint, I'm sure he sees the writing on the wall as far as the organizational reset that we've been talking about with this place. Yeah, maybe he doesn't really want to even be a part of that anymore. But hey, look, I mean, really, when you just break down the film here and you watch him here, I mean, just look at some of the stuff that this guy can do. Now, this is really just a simple flat foot read in a single high safety look. But just watch how he sniffs this play out and comes downhill and plays with the kind of speed and ferocity that you just don't see many safeties being able to do on a consistent basis. And this is why he is so respected and would be so sought after on the free agent market or on the trade market if he truly was available. And this is something I did for NFL matchup last year, and just watch. I mean, he's just clued in. And boom. I mean, these are the kind of plays that he makes all the time. You know, you sit there and you go, well, that's not really that complicated. But actually, those are the kind of plays he makes on the regular. And then here, when you talk about his sideline-to-sideline range, when Seattle plays their vaunted cover one, where everybody's just matched up man-to-man, and Earl is just the eraser. He sits back there at about 12 to 14 yards, and now he is just trying to break on the football here, and he can get from the middle of the field to the bottom of the numbers in the blink of an eye. And here, he should have come up with this interception here. I mean, it would have been a tough play, but those are the kind of plays, and that's the kind of range he plays with on the regular. Every team would want a guy like that. Seattle wants a guy like that. But you're talking about a guy who's seen all of his buddies go. He's seeing the win. He sees how things are changing there. Of course, he probably wants to change too.
To piggyback off of Lewis's tape there, that first play, they're playing cover one, and they get double slant against the Minnesota Vikings. I have never seen another safety have a pass breakup on an inside slant on cover one. It doesn't happen. You reference Hall of Fame player. Plays like that don't exist. Other guys don't have that on their resume. That's an absurd play. The issue I think that Seattle ends up having is this. There's been a lot of change. Wendy, you alluded to it. Bobby Wagner's probably the leader. Who's the leader of that defense, right? And so now your leader is saying, extend or let me go. That's where you have a problem, is your leader is the guy that wants out of there. That's where I think Seattle gets put in a really tough bind.
And he knows he's putting him in a tough spot because he's been around.
Which is why it's on Instagram.
Which is why he did it. Yeah, exactly.
Ow. Yep, you guessed it. I'm a speed bump, so I've got one job. I slow you down. So imagine how I feel about Geico, who does way more. Like, not only could they save you money on car insurance, but they've been around for over 75 years, giving people fast and friendly claim service. Ow. Plus, they got a nifty mobile app that gives you 24/7 access. Ow. Just doing my job, buddy.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Time now to go inside the headlines. Our first coming from our own Adam Schefter, who tweeted this out earlier today. In a year which there are potential for some notable training camp holdouts, Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski will not be one. Gronk expected to report to Patriots training camp July 25th on time, per a source. Adam Schefter, what more do you know?
Well, Wendy was in the building yesterday, and there are players who are in the building sometimes before camp and don't wind up showing, and there are players who come to the building and then do wind up showing. He was not there for voluntary OTAs this offseason. He did show to the mandatory minicamp. So I think the sense was that he would be there for training camp, but the contract issue still is unresolved. He has not gotten the new deal that has been talked about, discussed, speculated upon. And so as long as that is not done, the question remains about whether or not he'll be at camp at the start. But he will. He will be there when the Patriots report next week, when most camps are reporting, and that'll be good news for the Patriots as they try to get ready to get back to the Super Bowl once again.
Lewis, what are your expectations for Gronkowski? in 2018.
Yeah,
obviously.
quite honestly, I think he will come out of the gates blazing because of the fact that they'll have no Julian Edelman, and this is an offense that's kind of in a state of transition as far as there's no Brandon Cooks anymore, no Deion Lewis there anymore. Tom hasn't been, no Amendola. Tom hasn't been there very much this offseason at all. Gronk hasn't been there very much this offseason at all. So what do you think Tom is going to resort to at the beginning of this season? He's going to resort to his default. His default is the big man, and the big man is going to get a ton of targets. So barring any kind of injury that really takes him off the field for a significant portion of time, which, is probably going to happen. I don't want to say significant injury, but Gronk hasn't played a full 16 games since his second year in the league. I would assume he is going to have one of his best years of his career because Tom is going to go to what he knows, and Gronk is what he knows, and he's quite honestly, maybe the best weapon in the National Football League.
Well, he's going to need him, though. Yeah. When you run down that list of weapons he won't have, Tom,
sure.
That is.
Yeah, I think Lou's right on the money with kind of how he'll play, especially early in the season. Listen, since his second year in the NFL, he's been the most important Patriot outside of Tom Brady. He really has. And I think every time that he's available for the season and paired with Tom Brady, you can pretty much count him in for double-digit touchdowns. I mean, that's what type of threat he is, which, we're talking about guys that want to be qualified as other positions, like at receiver, at running back. The fact is, the guy scores touchdowns, and that's an important thing for that offense.
Again, Patriots report to training camp July 25th. Our next headline from Forbes magazine, reading Green Bay Packers Aaron Rodgers still hoping to get a new contract done. And in the article, the Packers president had this to say about a potential Rodgers extension. Obviously, he's an important player. He wants to be here, and we want him to be here. When both sides have a common interest, you get deals done. Aaron has been great, obviously a great player, but my wife says it's a good thing he's the face of the franchise and not you. He represents the organization well. Where do we stand, Adam Schefter, on a Rodgers extension?
Well, I think both sides would like to get this done by training camp, and it would not surprise me if there's a push in the next 8 days to see if these two sides can figure out a solution finally that would get the Aaron Rodgers deal done before camp so he and they both don't have to worry about it. And if and when this deal does get done, I would expect it to be a blockbuster deal, the richest deal ever given out in NFL history. I would expect it to be somewhere between $32 and $35 million a year annually. And it's a question of whether these two sides can figure out something before training camp begins for the Packers on July 25th.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, there shouldn't be concern about the time.